The story begins with the protagonist's reflections on his own nature. In his opinion, there are only two categories of people in this world: those who win and those who constantly suffer defeats. He was clearly aware that he belonged to the second group, those who were unlucky and who failed to make it to the top. In front of him on the desk lay a pre-prepared resignation letter. The protagonist, a tall, dark-haired man with piercing blue eyes, stood in front of a girl who held his application in her hands. The young man's name was Sai-O-Lo. There was almost no text on the paper, except for a brief reason: illness, without any additional comments. The girl, looking at the document, turned to Sai with alarm, trying to find out the true reasons for his departure. She looked sadly straight into his face and asked if his decision was connected with their recent breakup. The guy was deep in thought. It seemed to him that between success and failure, there was only a thin line that was easy to cross. He slowly rose from his chair, looked at the girl, and calmly informed her that it was not her fault. He had made this decision for personal reasons. Already heading for the exit, he noticed that, most likely, this was their last meeting. Their glances crossed, and he, without stopping, walked towards the door. At that moment, as if suddenly remembering something important, the girl behind him apologized. He didn't stop or turn his head. He just calmly said that he had given her 4 years of his life and didn't intend to waste his time any longer. Standing up, she explained guiltily that she didn't want to marry him and live in a cramped rented apartment. Her dreams didn't include being a regular housewife. "This is not the life that I, Zhao Mengzi, want for myself," she screamed, not hiding her emotions. He still did not turn around, but said that he would not reproach her for her choice. He respected her aspirations, even if they diverged from his. The girl cried out in despair for him not to leave, and asked whether he was really ready to remain among the losers forever. Without saying a word, the boy left the office where Zhao Mengzi remained. One thought was spinning in his head. Success and failure were labels given to him by others, but from now on no one would have the right to judge him. Clenching his fist, he slammed the door behind him and headed to his work area to put his things in a box. At this moment, a young man approached him, accompanied by 2 bodyguards. His name was Hua Hangji, the heir to the Hua Hai Corporation. He approached Sai and extended his hand in greeting. Turning to him with a smile, Hangge introduced himself and expressed his gratitude for taking care of Kiki for a long time. The 2 female employees standing a little behind were whispering that Mr. Hua and Zhao Mengzi were probably having sex. They sneered that Zhao should quit her job because of this. One of them, however, was watching the scene between the 2 men with interest. Hua extended his hand, expecting a return handshake, but Zhao indifferently brushed his gesture aside, citing his busy hands, which confused his opponent. Insulted by such disdain, Hua boiled internally and decided to deliberately escalate the situation, intending to provoke Zhao into a direct confrontation. With a wry half-smile, he noted that he and Zhao Mengzi had a special connection, clearly hoping that such words would touch Zhao to the quick. He casually told those present about his personal relationship with the girl, without mincing words. Hua, looking askance, noticed that, according to the girl's stories, Zhao seemed to be experiencing serious health problems. The hint was clear. Another employee joined the observing group, and they discussed what they had heard in low voices. The girls speculated about a romance between Hua and Mengzi, but they could not come to a consensus. One of them, the one with purple hair, suggested that Hua was simply carefully hiding her feelings. Without even turning his head, Zhao abruptly said that one would have to be either crazy or stupid to so openly share intimate details with a casual acquaintance. Hearing this, Hua finally lost his temper. He was angered by Zhao's impudence. He grabbed Zhao by the collar, lifting him off the floor, and hissed furiously at how such a worthless guy dared to accuse him of having a mental disorder. Zhao confidently twisted his arms and without hesitation, placed his palm on Hua's face, telling him to get out. Walking back to his bodyguards, Hua angrily gave the order to teach the impudent man a lesson, calling him an arrogant bastard. One of the guards immediately moved forward, underestimating the opponent's physical strength, but before he could strike, he received a powerful counterattack from Zhao. The advantage was on the latter's side. Shocked at how easily his subordinate had been incapacitated, Hua turned sharply to the second bodyguard and demanded to know why he was still inactive. The second guard immediately rushed to the attack, not wanting to embarrass himself in front of his superiors. Jumping up to Zhao, he caught his fist and mockingly asked if this was the limit of his abilities. Zhao chuckled and calmly noted that even one blow from him could decide the outcome of the fight. He had proven this more than once. Realizing that the situation was getting out of control, Hua decided to resort to blackmail. He threatened that if Zhao laid a finger on him, he would no longer be able to stay in Jiancheng. Xiao merely glanced at him, clenching his fists, and calmly asked what exactly he was planning to do. As he approached, Hua said in a strangled voice that if he dared to touch him, his father would use all his connections to drive Zhao out of the major city. He emphasized that the boy should not have taken a single step in his direction. Approaching Hua, Zhao aptly stung him with words that it seemed that he should have been raised not by his father, but by someone more sane. Their escalating conflict was suddenly interrupted by Zhao Mengzi, who abruptly stood between them, begging Zhao to stop. But Zhao himself was frankly stunned by her sudden defense of Hua. The girl raised her voice and demanded to know why he had attacked Mr. Hua. Running up to the last one, she began to examine him anxiously, checking if he was hurt. Xiao looked at her with confusion and asked bitterly if the 4 years of their relationship had really been nothing more than an empty joke to her. Looking her straight in the eyes, he asked in a restrained voice if she really believed that she and Hua could have something serious. After finishing his sentence, he chuckled, noting that it all looked downright funny. As he turned around, Zhao threw back sharply that Hua was using her solely for his own personal gain. The girl, dumbfounded, asked what he meant and what he was talking about. The guy looked at her with an expression of devastated disappointment and dryly confirmed that everything was exactly as he said. Xiao then mentally activated the built-in system, asking it to exchange his accumulated knowledge. The system recorded that 22 people experienced strong emotions and awarded 215 points. At the moment, Zhao has the opportunity to exchange them, including foreknowledge of foreign languages. Without hesitation, he immediately confirmed the operation. The program reported a successful transfer. Hero's new parameters: the owner of a greedy physique and linguistic abilities. At that moment, Zhao was sure of one thing. He was still Zhao Luo, and he would be the winner. Everything had its time. He sat alone on the bench and remembered the first time the system window appeared before his eyes. Then he thought it was a hallucination. But no, this system, as it turned out later, came from a parallel universe under the code T168Q and chose him for synchronization, having the necessary reserve of energy. Its mission is to turn him into a genius and completely change his destiny. Intrigued, Zhao asked the system what he was currently considered to be. He noted that he had a profession, engineer, not the worst result. The system scanned and announced the verdict: level mediocre. Its recommendation: continue earning points to exchange them for significant skills and bonuses. Hearing this, Zhao felt as if he had heard a verdict. But he did not give up. He directly told the system to just give him a couple of points, and then added, ironically, $100 million, or a general, for example. The system's interface read, it can only modify the user's physical parameters and expand their knowledge and skills. Zhao realized that the path to success would be much more difficult than he had hoped. He was still sitting on the edge of the bench, looking thoughtfully ahead. Inside, the thought was ringing. You can only rely on yourself. He was distracted by a sharp beep. A message had arrived. His mother was asking if his father was sick and if his son had any money. After holding the phone in his palm for a long time, Zhao finally decided to answer, although he had difficulty finding words. He promised that he would transfer the required amount within a few days. A bitter thought flashed through my mind. A man without means seems to lack dignity. He was talking on the phone with someone he knew. The other person was complaining. Why call so soon after what happened? Did he have any plan? Did he have a job now? In the end, the other person sarcastically noted that he had always considered Zhao unreliable and was not surprised that she had gone to Hua Heifeng. Xiao, clutching the newspaper, irritably asked him not to stir up old things and asked if he knew any way to make money quickly. At that moment, someone tugged his sleeve slightly. A little girl stood before him. Her clothes were worn out, her face was covered in dust. She looked him in the eye and quietly asked for some money. Xiao turned away and said that he himself had nothing. The girl nodded and apologized. But suddenly, several crumpled bills and change fell into her palm. Her eyes filled with tears. Xiao said that this was all he had left and he couldn't afford more. The girl smiled sincerely and thanked him. She said that he was a kind person and Buddha would definitely reward him. It was only when she had moved away that he noticed that she was limping. The thought suddenly flashed through my mind. She might be disabled. At this point, the system generated an alarm. A new task has appeared. Save this unusual girl. For successful completion, 300 points. Xiao froze. Danger. He realized she was really in trouble, and he needed to act quickly. Watching the retreating figure, he said into the telephone receiver for his interlocutor to wait a bit. The response was sharp. The man angrily said that he was not an emergency service operator to listen to such things. The interlocutor irritably noted that if Zhao just wanted to be silent, he could not hesitate and end the conversation right away. He was not going to wait for anyone. Zhao asked him to tell him what his business was. He replied that he knew a carrier who wanted to buy up local products, take out a loan, and export everything for sale. But due to problems with the documents, the financing was not approved. If Zhao had at least 130 yuan, he could try. The promised income was about 20 yuan in 20 days. Zhao flared up and replied sharply that if he had those 130 yuan, he would not have asked how to make money quickly. The friend added that he knew a girl who wanted to open a nail salon, and she only needed 50 yuans for equipment. In a year, she could get 60 as a profit, or enter as a partner. Meanwhile, Zhao continued to follow that same girl. Suddenly she turned around sharply, as if she felt someone's gaze on her. Zhao again asked his interlocutor to wait a little, but he exclaimed that he was not his driver, and if Zhao really needed help, he should at least listen to what they told him. And just at that moment, without ending the call, Zhao caught an alarming sound nearby. He saw a large man threatening the girl with a cigar in his hand. He had the pack he had just taken from her. The man mockingly asked if she really didn't need a second leg. The girl burst into tears, begging not to harm her. The man, shouting threats, said he was
I would be very happy if you subscribed to the channel, liked and wrote a comment, rating this manga on a scale from 1 to 10. Your opinion is very important to me. This will help me better understand what my audience is interested in, because you are really important to me.
Tired of hearing her cry every day. He gave her a choice: pay up or get hurt. Zhao stepped out of the shadows and walked firmly towards the man, demanding that he leave the girl alone. He turned to him with an angry face and growled a question: "Who are you anyway?" At the same time, in Zhao's pocket, an anxious voice could be heard from the phone. The interlocutor was trying to understand what was going on. Zhao, without showing any fear or emotion, calmly ordered him to step back once again. The man grinned, pulled out a knife, and declared that he would not tolerate interference in his affairs, adding that Zhao was asking for his own death. But he didn't even have time to raise his hand. Zhao delivered a powerful blow straight to the body, causing the brute to instantly fall to the ground. A series of concerned questions came from the phone. The person on the other end of the line was clearly trying to figure out what kind of noise was going on. Ignoring the voice on the phone, Zhao walked up to the girl and said that the danger had passed and she was now safe. The girl, in tears, admitted that she really wanted to go home. She missed her parents and dreamed of seeing them again. After his words, the girl burst into tears even more, barely holding back her sobs. Zhao gently stroked her head, trying to calm her down. He promised that he would now take her to the policeman, and he would definitely help her return home. But she only shook her head, looking up at him gratefully. Holding the phone to his ear, Zhao briefly said that everything was fine, it was just a minor incident. He added that he did not have 50 yuan and was now heading to the station. He asked to call back later. Taking the girl in his arms, he headed towards the police station. But from the window of the house opposite, a man with a wary and cold look was watching them, clearly not friendly. The man chuckled and, with a smile on his lips, quietly said that he was a model guy. It was summer clear outside. The sun was pleasantly warm. The sky was shining without a single cloud. Zhao returned home and finally allowed himself to rest. He had neither the weight of worry nor the extra clothes on him, and slept easily and relaxed. But the peace was interrupted. There was persistent knocking at the door. First quietly, then louder. Zhao sleepily got out of bed, wondering who could have come at such an early hour. There were several men standing outside the door. One stepped forward, introduced himself as Chu Yongqing, and said that he had come to ask brother Xiao Yuo for a favor. Hearing his name again, Zhao thought about it. It sounded strangely familiar. Shi Yongqing was one of the most influential figures in the city. When Zhao finally realized who it was, the man nodded. Yes, he was that Chu Yongshu. After opening the door, Zhao still couldn't understand why such a wealthy man had come to him. Nevertheless, he invited the guest inside. When they entered, Zhao turned to him and, without hiding his surprise, asked why a man of such status was looking for an ordinary guy with no money or connections. The man calmly replied that he had been watching him. He had seen Zhao come to the girl's aid and had noted his reaction, determination, and physical fitness. For a moment, Zhao was wary. Could this person have somehow seen the system? But at the same moment, the interface warned him. Ordinary people are not able to perceive it. Chu continued. He said that he has competitors who have allied themselves with criminal structures. He is afraid that his daughter may end up in trouble. Therefore, he needs a person who, under the cover of a student, will discreetly protect her. Xiao looked at him with a bit of doubt. He honestly admitted that he was not suitable for such a role, certainly not as a bodyguard hiding under the guise of a student. The man didn't let him finish. He interrupted, firmly declaring that he would pay 1,000,000 yuan. Without giving Xiao a chance to say a word, the man immediately doubled the offer to 2,000,000 yuan. Hearing this, Xiao agreed without hesitation, so he found himself at an elite university with an impeccable reputation, where he ended up in an unusual class consisting exclusively of girls. However, despite the prestige and the surroundings, only one number was spinning in his head: 2 million. As soon as he crossed the threshold of the auditorium, all eyes instantly turned to him, as if to the center of gravity. The girls did not hide their surprise. A new student had appeared in their all-female group, and it was a guy. They immediately surrounded him, bombarding him with questions. Some liked his restraint, some had already managed to flare up with sympathy, and several girls immediately asked if he had a lover. Once caught in the circle of intense attention, Xiao was unable to escape. He found himself a prisoner of the girl's interest. But there was one, silent, distant. She didn't even turn her head in his direction, not understanding what all the fuss was about. When the teacher entered the classroom, she quickly tidied up the room and told the girls to take their seats. Then she directed Xiao to find a place to sit. The charming girl in glasses smiled and offered to help, saying that he could always turn to her if he had any difficulties. Xiao, watching their frantic energy, was sincerely surprised. Where did these girls get so much liveliness from, and why are there no other guys in this class? Meanwhile, one of them, the dark-haired one, who had taken a dislike to Xiao at first sight, decided to teach him a lesson. She quietly put her foot in front of him. He didn't notice the trap and, losing his balance, stumbled. As a result, having lost his bearings, he awkwardly crashed right into her, accidentally hitting her chest. Recoiling in panic, he began to hastily apologize, assuring that it had all happened by accident. Blushing to his ears, Xiao quickly retreated and hid in an empty seat in the farthest corner of the classroom. And that same girl was already plotting revenge in her head. In her eyes, all men were equally disgusting. By midday, it was the second period, and Xiao was already beginning to feel how boring this subject was. His eyelids fell heavily, his head slowly drooped downwards, and he fell asleep, his face buried in the desk. As soon as Xiao closed his eyes, the teacher, noticing him, suddenly turned to him with a question on the topic. There was no answer. The young man did not react at all. Turning to the class, the teacher noticed that Xiao was asleep with his face on his desk. Raising her voice, she called out to him sharply, demanding to know how he dared to fall asleep during her lesson. At this moment, the dark-haired girl, still holding a grudge, decided that now was the right time to set up the newcomer. Raising her hand, she said with feigned politeness that the new boy seemed to show no respect for the teacher and was clearly violating discipline. Xiao clenched his fists, reminding himself that this girl was his target. Her name was Chu Yu, and for some unknown reason, she seemed to be trying to make life difficult for all the guys who came to this school. He slowly rose from his seat, apologized to the teacher, and explained that he had only arrived the night before and had not yet had time to adapt. Then, without losing his composure, he turned the conversation towards accusations and asked his classmate to clarify at what point exactly he had been rude. The entire audience erupted in squeals and joyful whispers. The girls were delighted that someone dared to answer Chu Yu. To them, it looked like something bold and daring, but Chu Yu herself, blushing, sat in silence, unable to understand why this guy even came here. The teacher tried to bring the class back to the topic of the lesson and wrote a new topic on the board. Money is the source of evil. She asked what the students thought about this. Zhu Yu was the first to raise her hand. The girl confidently began her answer, referring to the words of Shakespeare. She explained that money has the power to distort the truth, blur the lines between good and evil, and turn morality into a commodity. It feeds greed, erases conscience, and many do not even notice how they become its slaves. Having finished her speech, she sat down, impressive. The girls in the class nodded enthusiastically, began to heatedly discuss how true Zhu Yu's words were, and expressed approval of her views. Suddenly, Xiao stood up, saying that he had a different opinion. He began to explain that money itself is not evil. It is only a tool, and blaming it for what is happening is simplistic and superficial. At that moment, the system interface notified him that he could instantly gain full knowledge of financial theories. But Xiao refused. He wanted to speak for himself. Chu Yu immediately objected, recalling the 1995 Tokyo subway tragedy in which 12 people were killed and more than 500 were injured. She added that the culprit was Sahara Renhuang, the leader of the sect, who later sold his hair for 30 yuan a lock. According to her, it was all purely for money. Is that not proof? Continuing with the theme, she told of the historical figure Wu Sangri, who allowed enemy soldiers to enter the country for money. He accepted payment in yuan and eventually became the ruler of Yunnan. She confidently concluded, "Money drives the most destructive actions." After finishing her speech, Chen Yuan suddenly turned to Zhao, throwing a question straight at him. Was he really only trying to become an emperor for the money? The guy looked up at her and said that he would only answer her last question. He recalled how money had been invented in the past, the very same money that had given rise to greed, perversion, and destruction. And he himself asked her the question, what exactly was the real beginning of all this greed? The girl blushed, taken aback by the surprise. At the same time, the classmates who were watching their dialogue began to make noise, discussing his bold but brave attack. Someone even suggested that Xiao was openly flirting with Princess Chu Yu herself. Xiao allowed himself a slight grin and calmly stated that true evil was not in money, but in the greed that lived in the hearts of people. Their argument was interrupted by the end of lesson bell. The teacher noted that the discussion had been unusually lively and suggested that the students remember what they had heard, and the lesson ended. One of the classmates approached Chu Yu and quietly said that Zhao Luo seemed to have a temper. She added that she did not believe he had bad intentions, and perhaps things could be settled if she gave him a chance. But Chu Yu flushed with irritation. She abruptly declared that she didn't care whether he was a bodyguard or not. Since he was sent by her father, she would not forgive him. She was angry that she looked stupid because of everything that had happened. Despite the clear weather, the situation was clouded. It was learned that Chu Yu was discussing a plan to frame Zhao on the phone with someone. The voice on the phone was telling her to increase the pressure on him. She responded by coldly promising that if Zaiwei continued to talk about morality, he should not expect mercy, but she would deal with him later. Frustrated and irritated, she walked down the hallway, thinking about how everyone seemed to be conspiring against her. But this time, she would definitely show this guy what it meant to face the arrogance of a real princess. Meanwhile, Chu Yu's interlocutor turned out to be a handsome young man who was watching the situation with interest. In his spacious and light-filled room, a portrait of Chu Yu hung almost on the entire wall. As he got up from his bed, he thought darkly about who dared to offend his goddess, Princess Yu. He mentally promised her that he would not let her down. Everything would be done. Let's return to the academy, where the bell just rang and the students began to disperse and gather for their next classes. Chu Yu approached Xiao and told him that there was a party planned for him tonight to celebrate his transfer. She asked if he wanted to come over. Xiao was surprised and didn't even have time to answer before she continued, not giving him a chance to get a word in. Chu Yu confidently declared that the meeting was at 6 o'clock in the evening at the school gate. As always, they would go together. With a grin, she approached him and, with a hint of provocation, asked if Xiao's bodyguard would come with him. The guy became wary. Was she trying to test him? Or had she already guessed who he really was? An hour later, Zhao was standing at the gate, exactly as agreed. But the girl was late. Already half an hour. Zhao began to feel growing anxiety. Something was wrong. Suddenly, someone's voice called out to Zhao, and he turned around. It was the teacher, who sternly asked him what he was doing here alone. The girl standing next to the teacher immediately took Xiao by the hands. The teacher cheerfully suggested that they play League of Legends together. One of the students, squinting, clarified that the game required a team of 5. The teacher replied that 3 would be enough. The main thing was desire. It was already 7 o'clock when an expensive car pulled up to the gates of the academy. Chu Yu stepped out, wearing a luxurious white dress. She was deliberately an hour late. Her pride still hurt. As she got off the car, the girl smiled sweetly, intending to apologize for being late, but suddenly noticed that Zhao had not arrived. She was overcome with irritation. She didn't expect the guy to leave without waiting for her. Without wasting any time, she called the dean's office, demanding his phone number. At this time, around 9 o'clock in the evening, Xiao had just finished playing with his classmates and was heading to the meeting, unaware that Chu Yu was still waiting for him. Seeing him finally appear, Chu Yu flushed with anger and abruptly ordered him to get into the car. It was already night outside. The full moon lit up the road. During the drive, Zhao calmly remarked that she was late. In response, Chu Yu irritably said that she had spent a lot of time choosing her outfit. He said that he had been waiting for her for half an hour, not wanting to continue the argument. She took the blame on herself, but told him to shut up. The car arrived at Ju Woo's villa late at night. As soon as they stopped, the same young man with whom Chu Yu had spoken on the phone just now ran out of the house. He shouted joyfully that they had finally arrived and everyone had been waiting for them for a long time. Chu Yu corrected him. She was not the guest of the evening today, but Xiao. She approached Zi Wu and warned him that if the reception was not luxurious enough, he would pay for it. The boy nodded politely, smiling, accepting her demands without objection. Zi Wu then walked up to Xiao, shook his hand, and said with a smile that Princess Yu had described him as kind and handsome. Now that he had met him in person, he knew she had not exaggerated. He motioned for him to enter, noting that the guest should not remain outside. Such a warm welcome confused Zhao. He became wary. These people were too friendly. Ignoring the invitation, he calmly said that he could wait here and that the others could go without him. He sensed that there was an intent behind this move, and he wanted to see how everything would fall apart. Inside, in the semi-darkness of the luxurious hall, stood two girls dressed in expensive evening dresses. The owner of the house beckoned to them, informing them that the princess had already arrived. The girls simultaneously exclaimed with joy that the princess was finally here. One of them hugged Chu Yu and hurried to warn him. Fujiyawa has a terrible dog living on her property. The girl admitted that they almost died of fear when they saw it. The girl winked, smiled, and with a sly expression asked to help her vent her pent-up anger. Princess Yu smiled gracefully and, as if playing to the audience, demanded that they bring the very dog that had so frightened Shuland. She added that she would personally see how scary this terrible animal really was. The young man nodded politely, bowing his head slightly to the princess, and followed the dog. Entering the dark room, the girl immediately noticed a huge dog on a thick iron chain attached to the wall. The dog noticed her too. He growled and began to bark furiously, straining all the power of his muscles. At that moment, Zhao appeared. He silently pushed the girl aside and stood in front of her, shielding her with his body. Calmly and firmly, he warned that the dog could be aggressive and it was better to stay behind. The girl rolled her eyes, thinking to herself that Xiao was just a coward who was scared of a regular dog. In her mind, the beast was just pretending to make them scared. She angrily shouted at him to move away and accused him of cowardice. Making a sudden movement, she accidentally pulled the chain too hard. The metal snapped with a loud crash. It became impossible to hold the dog. He broke free and, with a growl, jumped straight at her. Zhao reacted instantly. He again shielded the girl with himself, without thinking about the consequences. Forced to defend himself, he delivered a precise blow to the dog to stop the attack. His gaze was so cold and cruel that even the enraged dog suddenly whined and rushed away into the darkness. But it was just a pretense. In reality, the dog simply changed its trajectory and suddenly rushed at Zhao, sinking its fangs into his shoulder. Seeing this, the girl was speechless. Her friends immediately pulled her aside, bombarding her with questions, whether she felt well and whether she should call a personal doctor. Sitting in a daze, Chu Yu quietly said that she was fine and asked to be left alone for a while. Xiao, standing nearby, noticed the signs of a panic attack. He leaned over and offered to take her home, saying that she needed to rest and recover. One of his friends came up to him and gently informed him that they would take care of Chu Yu. Smiling, she added that Yin would look after her friend since he was the main person of the evening. Pulling his sleeve, she invited him to join in the fun. Xiao smiled reservedly. One thought was spinning in his head. These girls clearly had their own plans for him, and he understood it perfectly well. With a smile on his lips, Zhao looked at the girl and asked with interest what they were going to play. Without saying anything more, she led him to the pool where the pool table was. She turned around and invited him to take a closer look. As they walked, Zhao couldn't stop wondering what she was planning. Approaching the table, he gallantly greeted the girl standing next to him and called her Sister Lan, noting her confidence and ease. She approached one of the guests and with a slight smile asked to borrow a cue. The guy, without thinking, handed her a stick for the game. Turning back, Sister Lan narrowed her eyes and asked Zhao with mocking interest if such a handsome man could play billiards. He was a little confused, but quickly pulled himself together and said that he had once handled a billiard table. She smiled indulgently, as if testing his confidence, and noted that, according to him, it turned out that he was not bad at this. Climbing up onto the pool table and sitting on the edge, the girl coquettishly handed him a card, saying that if he pocketed even one ball, the card with thousands of yuans would be his. There was excitement in her eyes as she asked him what he thought of the proposal. Xiao responded with a smile, and asked with interest whether he understood correctly that this was some kind of bet. He added that if he lost, he would not be able to pay her anything because he simply did not have any money. But the girl didn't seem to care at all. She calmly stated that money was not the main thing here. The only condition was that if he lost, he would have to leave the villa. Taking the cue, Xiao politely addressed everyone, stating that the ladies were supposed to start first, and invited her to take the first shot. There was a murmur among the guests. Some shook their heads in surprise. After all, Sister Lan was considered invincible at billiards, and this guy either knew nothing or was crazy. Xiao internally turned to the system and asked if it was possible to urgently obtain a skill suitable for this game. The system responded that the skill of a professional billiard player is available for 700 points. Xiao immediately wanted to make an exchange, but the interface coldly informed him he only had 695 points, only 5 missing. While he was mentally cursing, Sister Lan had already taken up position, took aim with the precision of an experienced player, and easily sent the ball into the pocket. The entire crowd immediately exploded with approval, chanting that the guy should kneel before her. He had no chance. The applause did not subside, and the atmosphere was filled with excitement. The girl, with a satisfied expression on her face, glanced in his direction and said that it was just a warm-up. Now it was his turn to show what he could do. Xiao felt a slight tension. He hadn't expected things to go this far. Now he really had to wriggle out of it, giving it his all. Behind him, the crowd was loudly commenting on what was happening. Some mockingly advised him to give up before it was too late. Others shouted that a real man does not retreat, but if he can't, he should admit it right away. Everyone was rushing him to hit. As he approached the table, Xiao suddenly realized that he barely remembered how to play billiards. Strange questions arose in his mind. What was that thing on the end of the cue, and what was it for anyway? And how the hell did you hold that thing properly? But contrary to expectations, and to Sister Lan's obvious surprise, he confidently leaned in, took aim, and made a perfect shot. The triangle shattered, and several balls immediately went into the pocket. Everyone present froze in shock. No one expected such accuracy from a rookie. A murmur went through the crowd. People started whispering, "This guy is definitely faking. He's just posing as an amateur, but he himself seems to be a professional." The system responded immediately. Xiao received 33 points for causing strong doubts among the spectators. A new offer appeared. Exchange points for a full-fledged billiard skill. Xiao did not hesitate. He agreed. The exchange was completed successfully. Now he had only 28 points left, and the system recommended that he earn new ones more actively. Sister Lan, slightly confused, looked at him with interest and smiled. She admitted that she did not expect such hidden dexterity and skill. Having handed him the card, she offered to play again, but on new terms. This time, $50 for a win. Xiao looked at her impatiently and asked what would happen if he pocketed all the balls in a row. Standing right in front of her, he declared that if he succeeded in doing this, then every time she saw him, she would have to move away several miles. Sister Lan chuckled and asked what would happen if the balls didn't fall into the pocket. He shrugged and said that in that case, he would become her dog. The girl raised her eyebrows in surprise. Xiao's confidence was almost insolent. The audience froze and then began to cheer Lan even more vigorously, urging her not to give up and defeat the guy at any cost. Xiao hit the cue ball with a powerful, accurate strike. The balls flew all over the table, smoothly and precisely hitting the sides, going one after another into the pocket. Sister Lan visibly tensed up. Xiao's words echoed in her head. Everyone held their breath as they watched the balls disappear from the table surface one by one. The last ball went into the pocket. Silence fell for a second. Xiao straightened up, nodded reservedly, and reminded everyone present of their agreement. The electronic scoreboard showed the result: 147 points in his favor. The girl froze, not believing that she had lost completely, but he didn't even look at her. Silently taking the card, Xiao threw it to her one last time so she wouldn't forget to transfer the required amount, and calmly left. The girl harbored a cold thought. He would still deeply regret this action. After finishing all the business with Sister Lan, Xiao left the gaming area without further ado and went to look for Chu Yu. He found her by the pool, calmly walked up to her and greeted her again. Then he told her outright that he wanted to go home and asked her to take him. Hearing this, Chu Yu immediately stood up from the sofa, adjusted her dress, and confidently walked towards him. But her path was blocked by another girl, the one with purple hair. She stood between Xiao and the princess, looking at him with obvious hostility. With a cold tone, she said that Chu Yu was not his personal driver and told him to get there on his own. Before anyone could respond, a third voice intervened. Someone apologized to the girl for not being able to entertain her properly. It was Fujiave. He was standing next to the same guy whose face Zhao had already met. Fujiave respectfully asked for a moment of attention and said that he would like to introduce the princess to this young man. Chu Yu smiled and half closed her eyes, asking who he was going to introduce to her, and told him to hurry up. Fujiawa announced that it was Huahai Feng, a representative of the powerful Huahai group. He added that the young man had long admired the princess and wanted to meet her. Zhao stood nearby, watching the events unfold, his thoughts revolving around only one thing. If Hua were to let anything slip, his cover as a bodyguard would immediately collapse. Without thinking, Zhao turned away and stood with his back to what was happening, hoping to remain unnoticed. Meanwhile, Huahai Feng came closer. Fujiawa motioned for him to come forward and began to tell Princess Yu about him with pathos, aiming to present him in a favorable light. He began to explain that next to her, even though he looked modest, there was... But before he could finish, he noticed that Zhao had disappeared. He was nowhere near the girls or nearby. Those present turned to Chu Yu in bewilderment and asked where her brother had gone, but the answer came by itself. Zhao returned, and without warning, he struck Huahai Feng from behind. Everyone froze. No one expected such an act. There was silence, full of shock and bewilderment. Zhao, not hiding his anger, said that he knew this man. He added that Hua had long had a strange attraction to older women and asked who let him in here in the first place. Chu Yu glanced at him with a slight smile. Her eyes showed that he was clearly hiding something, and that made everything that was happening even more interesting. Fujiawa, holding back his emotions, turned to Zhao again, asking if he really decided to do this himself. There was a slight reproach in his voice. He added that none of this mattered to him personally, since Zhao was still an important guest. However, the public incident could not be left without consequences, so he was forced to call security. When security arrived, Fujiawa pointed at Zhao and said he had insulted his expensive guest. He demanded that he be thrown out of the party immediately. Zhao just smiled wryly and calmly noted that there was no need for that. He was about to leave himself. At this point, Fujiave abruptly changed his focus, turning to Yin. He asked if she had lost anything today. The girl admitted with slight confusion that, indeed, her expensive necklace had disappeared. It was worth a lot of money. Fujiave, with false concern, promised to help in the search. Chu Yu watched the scene and at some point realized that this was a pre-planned trap. One of the guards stood in front of Zhao, warning that before leaving, everyone would be searched until the missing item was found. Chu Yu sank down onto the chair and exhaled heavily, realizing how far Fujiawa's plan had gone. The two guards grabbed Zhao by the arms, demanding his complete submission, and even tried to force him to take off his clothes. He was stunned. After all, he just wanted to leave quietly. As the pressure increased, Zhao frowned and hoarsely exhaled that they had asked for it. He easily pushed both guards away, freeing himself from their grip. In one swift moment, he delivered a precise kick at one of the guards, and then easily dodged the second, moving with honed agility. As he took his fighting stance, an unpleasant realization hit him. This was all a setup. Chu Yu had called him here on purpose, and this farce was her initiative. But before he could do anything, a system signal sounded in his mind. He had received an emergency mission. The goal was to track down a mysterious dark shadow. The reward was 300 points, but if you fail, the points will be deducted. If the points are not enough, the system will randomly deduct one skill. Zhao was still in the Juwu villa, surrounded by luxury, falsehood, and now, threat. He wasted no time. Seeing a black figure slip across the roof, he immediately gave chase. He had one thought in his head. This shadow was moving too fast, and if he hesitated for just a moment, he would immediately lose sight of it. Without thinking, he continued his pursuit. Although the enemy clearly had the advantage in speed, Zhao was not going to fall behind. His breathing was ragged, but he did not slow down, never taking his eyes off the silhouette ahead. When the shadow suddenly stopped, Zhao froze as well. It flashed through his mind. Completing the mission requires more than just speed. It would be much more difficult for a person with excessive caution to complete it. After 15 minutes of intense pursuit, Zhao finally stopped next to a parked car, breathing heavily and trying to concentrate. His gaze caught on the man in the shadows, and he almost thought it was one of Chu Yu's bodyguards. But at that moment, Zhao realized that he had missed. It was the shadow itself. The mysterious man was no longer hiding. He jumped out of hiding with lightning speed. With one almost invisible movement, he disarmed the bodyguards. Their weapons disappeared into their hands, as if they had been snatched away by an invisible hand. The shocked guards immediately rushed in pursuit of the attacker, without waiting for orders. But Xiao stopped them abruptly. He said that they urgently needed to head to the Fujiawa villa. Someone was clearly targeting Chu Yu. When the guard asked why he was so sure, he only repeated, "The princess is in danger." It was already well past midnight. The villa was plunged into darkness, illuminated only by the stars, whose glow now seemed brighter than any lantern. Chu Yu stood by the pool and looked at the water surface. Her thoughts were still occupied with Xiao Luo. She was beginning to understand that the guy was not as simple as he seemed. Perhaps she should reconsider her attitude towards him. The girl thought about it. Looking up at the sky, she suddenly noticed a dark figure jumping down on her from the darkness above. A moment later, the man was already there, covered her mouth with his hand and pressed her to himself, not allowing her to make a sound. In a panic, Chu Yu silently prayed that someone, even her father or a random passerby, would save her so that everything would end well. At this moment, silently, like a shadow, Xiao Luo appeared behind the attacker. With one precise movement of his leg, he broke his opponent's grip, forcing him to loosen his hold. The kidnapper chuckled, throwing a sarcastic phrase toward Zhao, as if he appreciated his intervention. And at that very second, he disappeared, as if he had dissolved into thin air, leaving no trace. Xiao immediately realized that this person knew exactly when and where Chu Yu would be alone. And that meant only one thing. Someone from her inner circle was leaking information. The girl sat down slowly on the ground. Her hands were shaking and her breathing was ragged. She was trying to come to her senses after the horror she had experienced. Xiao felt his insides tightening, and a sickening feeling came over him. He was being watched again. Turning his head, he realized that he was not mistaken. He spun around, ready for another attack. But there was only a terrified guard standing in front of him, who quickly assured him that everything was fine. They were their own. After confirming that the immediate threat had been eliminated, Xiao approached Chu Yu and calmly said that he wanted to go home. He added that the bodyguards were required to immediately inform Mr. Chu of everything that had happened. In addition, he expressed suspicion that there might be a spy hiding among the girl's inner circle. 3 hours after the incident, or, more accurately, after the blow he received from Xiao, Hua found himself in a spacious room. Inside, there was only a large bed, on which a girl was reclining, engrossed in her phone. Hua sat next to him, just awake, holding a cigarette in his fingers, gloomily sharing his thoughts about how pathetic it was to be hit by a worthless person like Xiao Luo. He didn't hide his anger, calling Xiao a weak-willed and pathetic loser, unworthy of attention. Turning to his interlocutor, Jie Wu, he asked if it was true that Xiao had no relationship with Chu Yu despite dating for 4 years. When Hua didn't get an answer, he asked a more important question. How was he supposed to get close to Princess Yu when Xiao was always hanging around her? He said that his father had instructed him to get close to her at any cost, and the only way out was to eliminate Xiao. He concluded by suggesting that he bring 2 of his father's bodyguards tomorrow to deal with Xiao for sure. He got up from the bed and nodded to Jav, heading for the exit. Only one thing was spinning in his head. If you want to achieve something, sometimes you have to fight. The next day, at the academy where the main characters were studying, the day began calmly, until Xiao didn't enter the classroom and didn't hear the painfully familiar voice. Hua stood in front of Chu Yu, inviting her to the concert with a slight smile. Hua insisted that the star, Su Li, her favorite, had personally confirmed her participation. He said that he had secured the invitation solely for her sake. Seeing this, Zhao felt anger boiling up in his chest. Before he could take a step, Hua turned to him with theatrical friendliness, smiling warmly and greeting him as if nothing had happened. His grin turned venomous. He sarcastically asked what Zhao was doing here, adding that he must be hiding in the academy after escaping from his love failures. One of the girls watching the scene looked at Xiao with interest and asked Hua if he could tell him what, if anything, Xiao could be useful for. Xiao stopped listening. He realized that his cover was still working. So the rules remained the same. Eliminate the threat before it revealed the truth. Deciding that the moment was right, he quickly swung at Hua, his blow containing all the pent-up fury he had accumulated. But at that very moment, someone intercepted his hand, stopping the blow a centimeter from the target. Hua grinned and said, not without pleasure, that he had not come alone today. He had a martial arts master with him. The fight began. Zhao did not give in, holding back blows and responding to them with equal force. The opponent turned out to be truly experienced, and this only fueled Zhao's interest. he immediately realized that this man possessed real internal art. And that meant that the fight would be truly worthwhile. The guy increased the pressure, and even the master felt the pressure, but he was able to withstand his blow, albeit with difficulty. Hua, stunned that even such a skilled fighter couldn't handle Xiao, began to yell at him, threatening to cut his head off. But the master didn't pay attention to the owner's cries. He was more focused on how Xiao easily blocked his blows. After all, even his developed internal art did not bring the desired result. Turning to Hua, he dryly remarked that Xiao was not as simple as he seemed, and was definitely not to be underestimated. He squeezed Hua's hand tightly, then turned to Xiao and bowed his head, apologizing for everything that had happened. He admitted that his master had made many mistakes. The man added that their visit here was not a challenge, but a gesture of reconciliation. They came only to express their apologies. Then, making a swift jump, he disappeared into the window opening with the girl. Xiao only sighed. He had expected more, but was not particularly upset by such a quick outcome. When he looked at Chu Yu again, she was still shocked by what she saw. She exclaimed that the man had literally flown through the air, but Xiao remained unperturbed. He said that it was just a demonstration of martial arts techniques and that she should not take it as something supernatural. However, the other girls in the class looked at him with suspicion. It was clear from their expressions that they thought he was just leading everyone on. Xiao sat down in his seat and, barely touching the table, addressed the system, asking what kind of technique was used by this person. The system immediately responded that it was a skill from a martial arts section called Kai. It then added that such a technique could be unlocked either through exchange or by completing special tasks. After thinking about it, Xiao asked how he could initiate additional tasks. The system responded with venomous irony that the user should wait patiently, like everyone else. The guy muttered discontentedly that if the system was so sarcastic, it was probably faulty. A week passed. A football match was taking place at the academy stadium, which brought together almost all the students. Xiao was on the field and, as expected, played a key role in the team. His agility and precise strikes left neither the spectators nor the support team indifferent. The girls squealed with delight and ran onto the field during the break to cheer on their favorite players. They all ran right up to Xiao. He didn't have time to say a word before he found himself tightly embraced from all sides. The girl's attention was entirely his. Chu Yu watched from the stands. She was silent, wondering if it was really this guy who saved her that night. Her thoughts took her far away from the noise of the stadium. A sudden jolt brought her back to reality. Her friend jokingly asked her if she liked this mysterious Zio, since she was looking at him so intently. Having risen from the podium, the girl headed towards the exit, throwing out on the go that she couldn't like a hooligan like him. The fair-haired guy sitting nearby caught this short dialogue between the girls. He thought about what he had heard. Who was this Zhao Yuo that even the stands were whispering about? After the break, a fair-haired guy came out onto the field and approached Zhao. He introduced himself as Du Pengfei and immediately stated that he had a request for Zhao. Without giving him a second to respond, he confidently continued, inviting Zhao to play ball with him. Without even waiting for approval, Du Pengfei walked to the center of the field, placed the ball there, and loudly announced that he wanted to hear the opinions of those around him about his shot. With a smug grin, he thought that he could easily put this upstart in his place. Having struck the ball with a powerful blow, he shouted with pathos that it was a tiger's blow. The ball rushed toward Zhao at a devastating speed, causing anxious whispers among the spectators. One of the players, standing at a distance, recalled how exactly such a hit had incapacitated another student last week, breaking his leg. The others began to suspect that something was wrong between the two. A murmur of cheers swept through the stands, someone shouting that Du Pengfei had gone too far. A girl in the crowd, worried, called out loudly to Zhao, fearing for his safety. But Zhao paid no attention to the screams or fears. He stood calmly, as if he knew in advance how everything would end. With one precise and swift movement, he stopped the ball right under the sole of his foot, as if it had not been flying towards him at hurricane speed. There was silence for a few seconds as the audience couldn't believe what they had just seen. Everyone was stunned by his reaction. Some were amazed by Zhao's football skills, others by his composure and imperturbable expression. The girls simply could not take their eyes off this grace and strength. Du Pengfei was dumbfounded. He didn't expect that someone could deal with his best strike so easily. Zhao smiled faintly, turned to the boy and, looking him straight in the eyes, asked his name. He added that now it was Pengfei's turn to try to catch his blow. Without wasting any time, Zhao took up position, put all his skill into the shot, and launched the ball. The ball took off, tearing through the air and rushed at great speed straight towards the blonde opponent. The ball suddenly bounced to the side, as if the air itself had changed its trajectory. However, having described an unpredictable arc, he still flew right into the target, causing a storm of emotions in the stands. Xiao looked at his opponent sullenly and, without raising his voice, made it clear that there would be no misses next time. At that moment, a loudspeaker began to roar right above the field. A giant poster with a dazzlingly beautiful girl was stretched over the stadium. The speakers were broadcasting a message. The star Su Lei had arrived in the city and would be giving a concert today. The audience froze, overcome with delight. Xiao immediately realized that this was all a setup. It was no coincidence that the concert advertisement appeared at this particular moment and place. The scene immediately shifts to a grand concert venue. Thousands of voices join together in a single cry, chanting the name of Su Lei as she takes to the stage. The girl was wearing an elegant snow-white dress that fell to the floor. In this outfit, she seemed the embodiment of grace and light. As soon as the music started, the star began performing the first song. The crowd immediately picked up the rhythm, not stopping to call her by name. All eyes were on the stage. The audience enthusiastically followed her every move, enchanted by the girl's voice and image. A bluish spotlight softly illuminated the singer's face, giving her an almost unearthly appearance. Rose petals rained down from the ceiling, carried by the wind towards the audience, creating the impression of real magic. Yoon stood among the crowd, holding her breath. She involuntarily turned around and immediately noticed Hua. He was slowly walking through the people who parted before him like waves before a ship. Their gazes met. For a moment, the tension between them could be felt on the skin. Yoon instinctively covered her face with her hands, thinking that the guy was walking straight towards her. But Hua walked past without even looking in her direction, as if he didn't recognize her, as if she was nobody. The girl stood there dumbfounded, unable to understand why he had decided to pretend that they were strangers. Meanwhile, Hua and Fu disappeared into a dark corridor behind the stage, where no one could see or hear them. There, Hua confidently said that he was taking everything into his own hands. He added that he would take the girl to the hotel and then sort it out himself. Fu was doubtful. He reminded Yu that he was not a simpleton and asked if Hua was confident in his abilities. But their conversation was already overheard by Zhao, hiding around the corner. He listened and wondered, were these two really passing on important information to Chu's enemies? And if so, how far were they willing to go? As soon as the boys disappeared into the darkness, Zhao frowned. It looked like they were planning an attack again. This time, the target was obvious: Chu Yu. Meanwhile, the concert continued. Lights, music, and enthusiastic cries shook the air. The crowd was not quiet. Someone enthusiastically noted that Su Lei had a simply divine voice. Another spectator added that it was now clear why she was considered the country's top star. A girl next to her dreamily said that she would definitely get her autograph, and one of the guys chuckled. Being the husband of a national goddess must be difficult. The disguised girl, hiding her face, quickly got into the black car. However, someone was already watching her closely behind her. As soon as the car started moving, the figure in the shadows followed, quickly heading towards the side of the road. He jumped into a passing taxi, pointed to the driver as the car drove away, and loudly announced its number. 15 minutes later, their taxi stopped at a luxury hotel. Night had long since come into its own, and the city streets were flooded with artificial light. Only the headlights of cars and street lamps cut through the darkness. Xiao got out of the car and immediately noticed Chu Yu. She was accompanied by Fu Jiawei, which immediately made him suspicious. After all, Yu should be at the concert, and not here, near the hotel. Fu Jiawei led her by the hand and said soothingly that her agent had asked him to take her to rest. He said she needed to regain her strength. Xiao, without wasting any time, walked up to the reception desk, placed a hefty wad of bills on the counter, and demanded to know where they were going. The girl at the counter smiled sweetly, but abruptly refused, emphasizing that she had no right to disclose information about the guests. However, in the same sentence, she mentioned that the guest was staying in room 2, number 15. Without wasting a second, the guy headed to the elevator, and the administrator quietly swept the money under the table, as if nothing had happened. Running into the cabin, Xiao furiously pressed the up button, feeling that something terrible was about to happen. The doors opened, and his ears immediately picked up cries for help. Without thinking, he rushed towards the sound. Running up to the right door, he knocked it down with his shoulder. The door fell right on Fu Jiawei, who was standing close to the passage. Inside the room, he also noticed he, whose presence clearly irritated him. He immediately began to make excuses, stuttering, but Zhao was no longer listening. His fists were clenched, ready for battle. Zhao glanced at the assembled group and said abruptly that he understood perfectly well what they wanted to do to the girl. Fujiawe began to deny, insisting that nothing had happened. But the boy interrupted him. They had kidnapped Su Lai to put pressure on Chu Yu, whom he had sworn to protect. The anger in Zhao's voice became almost physical. He stepped forward and hoarsely said that he would beat the crap out of them. Zhao, with a predatory grin, aimed a blow straight at the groin of his opponent. The latter wheezed, begging him to stop. But instead of mercy, he received a mirror response. An equally precise and merciless blow from his offender. The room exploded with a cry of pain. He howled, clutching his belt, bending over. It was deep night outside, enchanting with its silence and the mysterious sparkle of the stars. Somewhere in the shadows of the living room sat a guy. He had just brought a girl there to help him. Sitting with a cup of strong tea, he was thinking. He was worried about the events. Chu Yu's kidnapping, the unexpected arrival of a star. Everything was happening too fast. He knew that if he took the girl to the hospital now, in her condition, it could leave a shadow on her reputation. A scandal was inevitable, and it could ruin her career. Opening his laptop, the guy began to say out loud, "With mild poisoning, water, physical activity, or just time helps." A plan was spinning in his head. How to help her without outside publicity. Hearing the girl complain about the fever, he closed the laptop. There was enough information. He decided to give her a sleeping pill. That way she would fall asleep faster and rest. But if that doesn't work, he'll just put her under a cold shower. That should do the trick. Opening the bedroom door, the guy froze in the passage. The light fell softly on the figure of the girl lying on the bed. There was something of a star at the ball in this image. Shining beauty and popular adoration. He swallowed. She was incredible. Coming closer, he handed her a pill. In a voice full of concern, he said, "Take this. When you wake up, everything will be fine." He chuckled to himself. Perhaps only he was capable of thinking about her safety at a moment like this, and not taking advantage of the situation. But suddenly the girl grabbed him by the collar of his shirt and pulled him towards her. She hugged him and whispered that she was still hot. The guy blushed, feeling the warmth of her body. Thoughts raced through his head. She was playing with fire without realizing it. He desperately tried to convince himself not to give in to temptation. When her hands began to slide over his body, he pulled back sharply, deciding that he would simply wait until the effect of the substance wore off and let her rest in peace. He sighed. The best thing he could do was leave. Anything else would be wrong. But when he headed for the door, the girl suddenly grabbed his wrist and pulled him towards her again. Without expecting it, he slipped and fell right into her arms. She hugged him tighter, and he tried to pull away again, feeling his will begin to give way under the pressure of desire. There was a nervousness in Finance Minister Chu's office. Yu pestered her father over and over again with the same question. Where does that guy live? The girl was not going to give in, demanding the address. But her father, frowning, snapped that he could not tell. Because Zhao was a master whom he managed to attract with great difficulty, he categorically stated that girls were forbidden from stalking him. Yu flushed with indignation and snapped. Does she really look stupid? She just wanted to hand over a birthday invitation. The father began to resist again, but his daughter's pressure was relentless. Finally, he gave in. The address was given. Standing outside Xiao's apartment, Yunkui was determined. She would get her way today. She still couldn't believe that he could be so cold to her. With a proud posture, she mentally rehearsed how she would hand over the card. But her confidence evaporated in an instant. Su Lai came out of Xiao's apartment, swaying and barely keeping her balance. Their eyes met. They passed each other, pretending they had never met. Yu froze. The postcard fell from her hands and landed smoothly on the asphalt. The girl ran out of the house. She couldn't believe it. Zhao turned out to be so terrible. In her eyes, he had fallen completely. Meanwhile, the guy woke up. The only thing he could say was, "What did I do last night?" The system responded sarcastically. He was already an adult. She added that he had taken advantage of the moment. The guy frowned and asked if she was gloating. She retorted that she was not gloating, but simply too sensitive to his emotions. Then she asked, "Will he celebrate this event?" But Zhao only asked her to shut up. The system didn't calm down. With a laugh, it announced a new task. Chu Yu was under attack downstairs. The guy had 3 minutes to save her and earn 100 points. Otherwise, it would take away one random skill from him. So that you feel like an animal, not a human. the system added sarcastically. Zhao, jumping out of the apartment in just his underwear with a rabbit, thought that the system had finally gone crazy. He was thrashing about, searching, when the system got in again. "Maybe you should turn left first, and then down the stairs," she said with caustic irony, "and pull up your underwear, or it'll fall out." Turning the corner, Xiao finally spotted Chu Yu. She was cowering on the ground in fear, and a man with a gun was looming over her. His voice was trembling with excitement. "Finally, I have a chance again." In an instant, Xiao rushed forward and struck the attacker with a crushing force. He loomed over him, coldly asking if he really was seeking death to dare to touch Chu Yu. The guy pushed him into the wall as if he weighed nothing, and clenched his fist and asked, "Who sent him?" The system immediately intervened in the conversation. "I like your courage, to walk around in your underwear with a rabbit in broad daylight." But Xiao did not let her finish. "Shut up!" The attacker, grinning through the pain, raised his head. Now his face was visible. "A pool of black water will swallow both the sky and the earth. You are already a corpse," he whispered ominously. Xiao frowned. "What the hell is this puddle?" he barked, but there was no answer. A voice came from the side. "Xiao!" It was the bodyguard running up to them. The man came up and thanked Xiao. Thanks to his intervention, there were no casualties again. The system did not fail to praise him. The task was completed. The reward was 100 points. And for winning in his underwear in public shock, another 250. You now have 741 points. Keep it up. Xiao turned to the guards. "Tell Mr. Chu that everything is under control, and find out what kind of organization this Blackwater is, and whether the boss knows about it." The bodyguard nodded briefly and headed towards the car. On the morning of Chu Yu's birthday, Xiao was in Mr. Chu's office himself. He informed him that his job as a bodyguard was over. Although the boy did not want to stay, it was for his own sake. Xiao was surprised. "Why? It hasn't even been a month." Chu laughed. "My enemy has disappeared, and I will take this chance to finish him off. If it weren't for my daughter's birthday, you would no longer exist." Xiao dryly congratulated Mr. Chu and casually asked him what he knew about Blackwater. Chu immediately became serious. "This is part of a large transportation syndicate, a criminal organization with powerful resources." At that moment, the office door swung open. The bodyguard ran in. "Bad news, boss," the blonde guy reported. "Mercenaries entered the city. Probably, these are the Red Scorpions from the same Blackwater." The men in the room instantly tensed up. The thought of Chu Yu flashed through everyone's mind. Xiao stood up. "Where is she?" he snapped. Without waiting for an answer, he headed for the exit. Xiao quickly rushed out of the office without wasting a second. The blonde boy tossed him the car keys. "Take them. You can use them to track where Miss Chu is." Xiao caught the keys in midair without turning around. "Make sure you have a cover. This will be a big story, and not without consequences," he said, already walking away. Once they reached the parking lot, Xiao jerked open the door and got behind the wheel. He immediately realized that the enemy must have prepared a backup plan. This level of risk requires insurance. At the same time, nearby, several armed men had already set up an ambush. Everything in their movements betrayed the training of professionals. One of them quietly whispered into the headset microphone, "On my signal, Walter shoots at the guards. In the confusion, we grab the target and leave." The answer came instantly. The coordinator's ear said, "Accepted. Goal scored." That meant Walter was in position. The sight stopped on the girl's figure. The leader of the operation gave a short command. "Ready," counting silently. 1, 2, 3. He pulled the trigger. The bullet hit its target precisely. At this time, Xiao was racing along the suburban road. With each passing second, his thoughts about Chu Yu became more and more anxious. He prayed that he would not be late, that there would still be something to save. The beacon on the monitor began to blink. The object, the dache, began to move. Zhao braked sharply. Jumping out of the car, he immediately listened to the situation. The system immediately issued the information. "Attention, ability activated, King of Mercenaries." Xiao tensed up as he heard echoes of gunfire in the distance. "First, we need to eliminate the snipers." He ran towards the forest, soaking wet from the rain, breathing heavily, clenching his fists from tension. There had been no visual contact with the enemy yet, but his intuition told him they were close. And then he understood. He stopped abruptly and looked down. A slight deformation of the grass, and a shadow. A sniper. One of them. A calm voice came through the sniper's headphones. "That girl who carried their messages. She's cute. It would be a shame if we ruined her face." One of the militants scornfully remarked that Chinese women had particularly graceful figures, as if emphasizing his lust. Xiao silently approached from behind and, hiding the weapon behind his back, in one smooth movement he neutralized the enemy, putting the gun to his body so that he could not even twitch. A dry voice came from the earpiece, announcing that the operation had been completed successfully and that the facility was being prepared for evacuation. Xiao intercepted the channel and calmly reported that Voltaire had been eliminated. After a short pause, the police chief broke into the air, threatening Xiao for taking Voltaire's gun. The young man asked ironically what retribution he would face for this, and, without wasting any time, dropped to the ground with a pistol in his hand. Taking a look at the situation, Xiao chuckled and quietly said that it remained to be seen who would actually pay for everything. One of the mercenaries intercepted the girl and did not let her go while she was trying to explain something to Feng Shuling. He accused her of betrayal. The girl responded coldly that she had always treated her kindly, but was now disappointed with her actions. The woman just chuckled and recalled how the girl and her father decided to cross the path of the Blackwater organization. At that moment, an alarming voice came from the earpiece of another mercenary, reporting problems with Walter and the need for urgent evacuation with a priority target. Hearing this, one of the fighters shouted to his partner that something had happened to Walter. He picked up the girl on his shoulders and ordered everyone to retreat. The warriors began to retreat, taking the kidnapped girl with them. One of them anxiously asked if there was a certain hare in their squad, but in response he heard that no one knew of such a thing. Almost immediately, the one nicknamed Hare was shot. Dying, he sadly said that he had not managed to collect enough tickets. The next victim was the one carrying the girl. The shot killed his partner in a matter of seconds. Due to a serious wound to the leg, the wounded man asked his comrade to continue on his way alone and leave him alone. The partner hesitated, but still obeyed and hurried to hide with the goal, shouting that he would definitely kill Xiao for what happened. Xiao caught up with the one who was abandoned in the forest, leaned over, and coldly asked why he allowed his friend to leave him alone, and was this really the kind of brotherhood they had? The boy looked down without saying a word. Then Xiao asked where the one who had abandoned him had gone. Suddenly, the wounded man pulled out a gun and pointed it at Xiao, saying that he had shot him in the leg not to spare him, but to use him as bait and get information about the others. He added that he understood everything and told Xiao to get the hell out. Just as his finger was about to hit the trigger, Xiao quickly attacked and intercepted it. The enemy didn't even have time to blink before he found himself in an iron grip. Looking intently into the prisoner's eyes, Xiao said that he had no doubt that those who started all this chaos would have their hands dirty. He added with cold determination that he would not let any of them go. Too many bodyguards had died, and the kidnapping of Chu Yu would have to be paid for in full. Without a moment's hesitation, Xiao mercilessly dealt with the mercenary, cold-bloodedly noting that too many bodyguards had died because of them, and he had no intention of letting them go unpunished for kidnapping Chu Yu. Having completed the massacre, he rose to his feet and thought that one of the attacker's partners was probably still hiding nearby. A recent downpour left wet ground on which tracks could reveal the enemy's location. Seeing fresh footprints on the ground, Xiao was convinced of his guess and rushed after them, noting to himself that they didn't even try to run far. Running along the path led him to a scene where one of the mercenaries was carrying a girl on his shoulders. Xiao immediately soared into the air, using the momentum and force of his jump to intercept the enemy. With incredible ease, he slammed the man into the nearest tree and dealt with him in a flash. From the impact, the girl's body slid off the mercenary's shoulders and fell to the ground. However, Xiao did not let her stay in place for long. Hearing the approaching tramp of a new wave of opponents, he quickly picked up the girl in his arms and ran away. The girl began to hit him on the chest, demanding that he let her go, but Xiao threw a short phrase over his shoulder to calm her down. It was him. She looked at him in surprise and asked if he had really come just to save her, but he angrily ordered her to shut up and ordered her to hold on to him tighter. Continuing to run at a rapid pace, he mentally promised that at all costs he would preserve her strength and protect her from her pursuers. Somewhere behind them, a bandit nicknamed Hare screamed, yelling that Xiao had already shot him once, and wondering how he could jump 2 meters while holding a person in his arms. The remaining mercenaries ignored Hare's cries and rushed after Xiao without losing their pace. The girl did not calm down and began to ask how he had made such a jump. Xiao, unable to bear it, again sharply ordered her to shut up and sarcastically added that if she was so eager to die, then at least let her do it silently. But that didn't stop her. Now she wanted to know who the girl was that she had seen in his room. Before she could finish speaking, he covered her mouth with his hand and muttered in displeasure that her chatter had become too noisy. Seeing that she couldn't shut up, Zhao decided that the only way to survive was to hide her. Finding a swampy area nearby, he immediately realized that this was an excellent place where the girl could be temporarily hidden from enemies. He plucked a strong straw from the swamp, growing among the reeds. Dividing it in half, he gave one part to the girl, ordering her to dive into the water and hide while he distracted the pursuers and eliminated the danger. Zhao carefully placed the straw into the girl's mouth, gesturing for her to remain silent. He briefly ordered her to hold her breath and dive without wasting any time. Having made sure that the girl was safely hidden, he rose to his feet and ordered her to stay under the water until he gave a sign. Looking at the approaching group of pursuers, he thought that now he would find out exactly which of them would dare to go all the way. Mercenaries roamed throughout the forest, trying to find Ziai and the one who was with him. One of them noticed the tracks and informed the others that the target must be somewhere very close. He ordered to comb the area until they were found. Meanwhile, just under the water at their feet, the girl remained holding her breath. One of the commanders became wary and shared his suspicions with the others, pointing out that the pursuit had been going on for too long. He added that although the target had been pursued for a long time, it still remained out of reach, which seemed strange. The blonde noted that only a true professional could hide so masterfully, especially while carrying someone. According to him, this guy definitely has experience and skills. One of the pursuers failed to notice the trap set by Zhao and fell into it, instantly hanging on the ropes hidden among the foliage. The force of tension threw him upward, and he found himself right at the level of the tree crown, where Zhao was already waiting. The young man grabbed him abruptly and demanded that he contact the others immediately. Without wasting any time, Zhao neutralized the enemy just as silently and quickly as he had all the others before him. One of the mercenaries, noticing the absence of his partner with blonde hair, reported that he had disappeared, and yet the red ghost was with them. He also expressed suspicion that the girl's mark somehow ended up very close to him, which looked suspicious. But he didn't have time to finish his thought. Zhao, jumping from the tree, attacked first and instantly neutralized him. Taking the earphone, he announced with a grin that there were only 11 left. The leader, hearing Zhao's voice, immediately understood who he was talking about, and for the first time he was seriously afraid for the fate of his fighters. After picking up the weapons from the bodies of his opponents, Zhao aimed his sights at the nearest target and opened fire. He began counting to himself. 1, 2, 3. Each shot brought him closer to a complete cleanup. Zhao eliminated each of the remaining mercenaries one by one, and without hesitation, leaving no one behind. He mechanically counted his opponents so as not to miss a single one. After completing the massacre, Zhao walked up to the group leader as quietly as if he had appeared out of thin air, and, pointing his gun at his back, said that he was number 1. He then stated that if there was a whole operation going on, the colonel was most likely there with them, and demanded that he call him. However, the man only smiled wryly and replied that Zhao could only dream of such a thing. He admitted that Zhao was far superior to his fighters, but added that their deaths were predetermined, and the Blackwater organization itself would not leave him alive. Without hesitation, Zhao eliminated him and calmly said, 0. Having finished the fight, he returned to the swamp and helped the girl out, grabbing her by the arms. Once she was on dry land, Zhao warned her to take off her wet clothes immediately, or she would get sick. As he handed her the phone, he added that it was her father who had given it to her and reminded her not to tell anyone who he really was. After finishing the conversation, he said that he would go first to make sure the route was safe. The place where they were hiding looked more like a swampy lake, densely overgrown with reeds and other vegetation. They soon reached a safe area, where police officers were already waiting for them. One of the officers, after listening to their story, said that everything was now clear and promised that Mr. Chu would not be disturbed anymore. As they said goodbye, the policeman advised the girl to contact them if she suddenly remembered anything else. Mr. Chu expressed gratitude for their work. He also ordered Leng Zuo to escort the policeman, and he calmly agreed, carrying out the order. At this time, the girl was resting in her room, and her father noticed that she was very tired, advising her to have a good rest. As he left her bedroom, he thought with relief how good it was that she was now all right and safe. As soon as he left, the girl was immediately overwhelmed by thoughts of Zhao. She thought about how to win him over, mentally noting how handsome he was. She silently promised to show who would make whom blush. The father returned to the living room, where Zhao was already waiting for him, and said that he had seen the police off. Mr. Chu said that he would invite Zhao to Changshan Pavilion the next day, and instructed his bodyguard to arrange everything in advance. He wanted to thank the young man properly. Changshanji's pavilion was decorated with obvious grandeur. The owner himself, Xiao, and Chu Yu were sitting at a luxurious table. The man suggested that the boy not be shy, and said that everyone present was his people. Mr. Chu raised his glass and said he wanted to be the first to toast his daughter's savior. Xiao replied reservedly that he was just doing his job, but thanked him for the kind words. At this time, Chu Yu continued to dream about Xiao. Hearing her father talk about her affection, she wondered how much things had changed. After all, he was just a bodyguard, and she was the daughter of an influential person. Mr. Chu turned to his bodyguard, who silently handed him the documents he had previously been instructed to prepare. Mr. Chu picked up a folder of documents and turned to Xiao and said that he had recently acquired a new company that was currently short of a qualified manager. He asked with interest if Xiao would like to take on the position. At that moment, the door burst open with a bang, and Hu Zhengong, Hu's father and the head of the Huahai Corporation, rushed in. He shouted at his guards, not hiding his rage, demanding that Zhao Yuo be brought to him immediately, as he intended to personally avenge his son. Chu Yu froze in fear. She had absolutely no idea what was happening and why such a scandal had suddenly started. Mr. Chu stood up from his desk and addressed Director Huahai in a reserved but firm manner, asking exactly what action he intended to take. Hu Zhengong raised his voice again and shouted that Zhao had injured his son, and as a father he had every right to respond in kind. He added that Zhao was just a bodyguard, and wondered why Mr. Chu should protect him at all. In response, Mr. Chu stepped forward and stated with icy calm that he didn't care what Zhao had done, but he would not tolerate anyone breaking into his pavilion without permission. He emphasized that Director Hua's behavior was an insult to his honor. Then he ordered Lu Zuo to escort the uninvited guest. The guy nodded with an indifferent expression and walked towards Director Hua to escort him out of the hall. As Hu Zhengong approached the exit, he chuckled and said over his shoulder that Mr. Chu wouldn't be able to cover for Zhao forever, and gave the order to leave. Already outside the pavilion, he angrily told his guard that he would accept the offer of a certain Long Sang Kui, but in exchange he would demand Zhao Yuo's head from him, promising to personally deliver it. Back at the table, Zhao thanked Mr. Chu for his trust and suggestions. Mr. Chu just waved it off, saying it was nothing, and asked him to return to their previous conversation. Mr. Chu continued, and admitted that there were very few people around him that he could trust without looking back. He added that Zhao was one of them, and asked him to think about the offer seriously.